To be captured by pirates is probably the worst nightmare of all traders, travelers, and just ordinary residents of Europe in the Middle Ages and in modern times. When pirates flooded the seas and oceans, many had the idea that there was nothing worse than falling into their hands alive, and especially a lady. Hanging norii, letting on the board, cruel torture, violence. But were the pirates really so bloodthirsty, and was it true that their captives were often in no danger at all? Why is a woman on a ship in trouble? Were the pirates sensitive and caring spouses? And what was the fate of a real pirate, whose life resembles a novel about Angelica, the Marquess of Angels? Is it true that the pirates, the very first to have health insurance, and they created, as a rule, very strong families? So, get acquainted. Today our heroine is a native of Normandy, Mariana de Levo, and she goes to Tartuba on a ship full of women, the most famous lair of pirates. No sooner had their ship dropped anchor, than they were instantly surrounded by boats filled to the brim with half-naked men looking extremely bloodthirsty. Their outfit was completed with various hats or headscarves. Of course, they were pirates who eagerly looked at the trembling women. This ship has been waiting on Tortuga for a long time. Many of the pirates on the eve of a drunken frenzy have already sworn that they will rush to board as soon as they see a ship on the horizon, since there is no urine to tolerate. And here is a ship with the long-awaited trophies in the port, surrounded by pirate boats. But instead of boarding, the desperate sea robbers are confused and embarrassed silent. If you happen to be on a ship in the Middle Ages and a ship with a black flag appeared on the horizon in front of you, then you would most likely breathe a sigh of relief. The real horror in those days was inspired not by the black, but by the red flag. It meant that all those who sail on your ship, the pirates intend to execute. But we have rarely seen such a flag. As a rule, under the cover of night, pirates cut the way to the merchant ship. The capture was lightning fast. Gun room, a quick boarding, which was not resisted. The crew and everyone who was on the ship, trembling, looked at their captors, expecting a painful death, torture, and wondered how it would be, hanging on the roof, letting on the board. That's just the board sent traders, not prisoners. Only their own narii were strung up at all. In fact, only 2 captains were famous for killing and torturing those who were captured. François Alain, a French filibuster who traded piracy in the 17th century, personally hated the Spaniards and therefore killed all those captured. Everyone in a row was tortured, killed, and in general extremely brutally dealt with defenseless prisoners, burned them alive, mutilated by the Englishman Edward Lowe, who was fishing during the decline of the golden age of piracy in the 18th century. He is called the most brutal pirate in history. Lowe committed such unthinkable cruelties that the rest of the pirates considered them simply unacceptable. He had a reputation for being simply insane. Apparently, this was the case, because it was at least unwise for pirates to kill prisoners. The pirates were very reasonable people, and the captives were used exclusively for their own benefit and enrichment. But who will kill the hen that lays the golden eggs? They were also mutilated only in exceptional cases. It was very easy to buy your freedom from the pirates. Noble captives, merchants voluntarily gave them all that property, including jewelry and real estate, which they owned on land, but they gained freedom. The pirates themselves set the amount of ransom for a particular person, based on his social status and financial capabilities. A noble passenger could well be on the captured ship. There was always a captain and a few officers there, and they bought themselves out. Well, what to do if you are as poor as a church mouse, and you simply have nothing to offer for your liberation? And in that case you wouldn't have been killed. Simple poor sailors made up, of course, the bulk of the prisoners. Those taken captive could become pirates themselves, which means full members of the community who have the same right to their share of the loot. And many agreed. In the 17th century less often, but in the 18th already with enviable regularity. After all, the salary of a simple sailor on a merchant ship was ridiculous, and the sailors and pirates came from the same social environment. Moreover, yesterday's prisoners now had the opportunity to become captains themselves. This, for example, happened to Bart Roberts, who once, as a carpenter on a merchant ship, was captured by Howell Davis and agreed to become a pirate. After the death of Davis, yesterday's prisoner became a captain himself. These are the social elevators. The pirates were protected much more than the sailors. In some ways, they were very advanced. So, they had health insurance for many centuries before they heard all the other law-abiding members of society. Already 4 centuries ago, pirates paid benefits to all wounded members of their team, based on the severity of the injury. For the loss of a limb, 600 Spanish dollars, for an eye, 200, complete blindness, already $2,000. Just so you understand, today it's almost $153,000. That's the kind of insurance. Moreover, those who became disabled were not kicked off the ship, they were called veterans and left on the ship. I must say that contrary to myths, pirates in general were very disciplined. There were clear rules about all aspects of their lives, including the division of loot, which everyone unquestioningly followed. Violators were severely punished. At the same time, the pirates held very democratic elections. In general, it seems that the pirates were more civilized than many law-abiding citizens of those years. Well, if you still did not agree to join the pirate team, and you could not pay the ransom for yourself, then you would hardly have been killed here either. Such could simply be released. What's the point of killing them? Because they might tell the authorities something. Well, firstly, the pirates never stayed in one place, and secondly and most importantly, in the 17th century they were military, and in the 18th the official authorities were already well aware of them. As a result, the prisoners were simply landed, for example, on a desert island, from which they were picked up by passing ships. They could have landed on an inhabited island or even in some sparsely populated place on the mainland. And what about the captives? Did the pirates treat them like gentlemen? Pirates were supposed to deal with women only on the shore. The thing is that ships, as a rule, had female names. This was to ensure the favor of the sea deities. Well, what kind of woman will tolerate the presence of a rival? The pirates judged. On many ships in the golden age of piracy, women were banned by the ship's contract, which was signed by all crew members. One day Captain John Cook and his crew decided to ignore this superstition. In 1863, they captured a Dutch slave ship with 60 black slaves, lots of food and even more alcohol. The pirates transferred to this ship, renamed it the Bachelor's Delight, and set sail. But such a ferocious storm broke out at Cape Horn that the ship was dragged away to very cold lands. It was getting colder and colder every day. Half-naked pirates, of course, did not have warm clothes. The girls began to die one by one. They escaped and did not freeze only because they drank like they were not in themselves, and they had unlimited alcohol reserves. Finally, the storm subsided, and the Bachelor's Delight was able to return to warmer climes. By this point, all the girls had died. One of the pirates, Ambrose Cowley, wrote, "We concluded that having affairs with women is very dangerous and causes a storm. But let's return to our women on the ship in Tortuga, surrounded by pirates, who for some reason are embarrassingly silent." Finally, the bravest decided to speak. If you think that half-naked sea robbers began to shout all sorts of obscenities, then you are very mistaken. The pirates politely asked how the voyage went and when we were feeling. Yes, we perked up in response. The dialogue began to improve. A detachment of soldiers, sent by Governor d'Azeron, came to the rescue and helped the ladies to go down to the shore. He said that they could rest for 2 days, after which they would be offered to choose their spouses here. What other spouses? Well, it is impossible to imagine these sea robbers spending their whole lives on deck and engaged in robbery, devoted and caring husbands. Here he is boarding a ship, and here is my house dishes. However, the real life of pirates will surprise you. Here is a letter from the real pirate Abraham Pine and his wife. "I think our voyage will last for 10 years, but I do not forget you, because I have nothing more than love for you and for our children. I remain faithful to you until death do us part." Surprised, but many of those who became pirates once had quite an everyday profession, had a family and children and, having engaged in robbery, did not break ties with them at all, although they were deprived of the opportunity to see each other. But through merchants or smugglers, they sent money, clothes, and just letters home. Pirate Evan John wrote off to his wife Frances that after long hardships he finally became a captain and is now going on a long voyage. And let her not hope that she will hear about him earlier than in 5 years. In response, the wives wrote to the pirates about everything, about high prices, and how Sir Horn fulfilled her husband's will and gave her son to study at a tailor. She ends the letter, "There are so many rumors about you that I would be very glad to hear from you yourself." 2 pirates from the crew of the famous Captain Kidd, Gabriel Love and Martin Skynes, after receiving their share, and these are politicians with clothes, sent these bales to their wives in New York. By the way, weapons, booze and clothes, and not gold coins at all, consisted mainly of pirates' loot. Nevertheless, the pirate Thomas Pringle still hopped up 200 coins that he sent to his wife, and left to save for a rainy day. A letter from the pirate captain of California has been preserved, who informs Mrs. Whaley that her husband died, leaving her all his fortune, which Captain Shaley from New York agreed to forward to her. noble. So the notorious robbers, pirates were quite good husbands for themselves. But let's get back to our women who found themselves in the lair of pirates. Marianne Delvaux and her friends were taken to the market at the specified time, where each of them was sold by a pirate at a marital auction. Our heroine became the wife of the pirate Pierre Long. It's time to reveal the secret. All of them were not captured by pirates, but voluntarily agreed to go to Tortuga at the invitation of the governor. So, in general, they probably guessed that he was waiting for them. And they obviously did not flee from their native places from a good life, and many were deported criminals at all, like Maria Anna. Some of them grumbled, but, in general, there was nothing to do. Oddly enough, historians agree that the marriages of all those who arrived and sold at this marital auction turned out to be durable, and the families exemplary. Marianne gave birth to several children and was widowed 6 years later, but resolutely refused all applicants for her hand and heart. One day she found out that the famous pirate Lawrence de Grave, who lives nearby, spoke about her extremely discourteously. She came to him with a gun and challenged him to a duel. He gave up, saying that he would not fight with a woman, and then, amazed by her courage, proposed to her. Apparently, he just liked her for a long time. I must say that de Graaf was an unusual person, capable of noble deeds. Moreover, he was described as a tall, handsome man with a mustache. The governor of Jamaica, Henry Morgan, called him a great and mischievous pirate, but the Spaniards thought he was the devil in the flesh. In general, Marianne married the handsome Lawrence de Graaf in 1693, gave birth to 2 more children. It seems that it was true love, since she did not agree to let her husband sail for many years. This time she went with him. And although the women on board were really considered a bad omen, after one incident, the pirates were sure that she was their good luck charm. Together they made many daring raids until the Spaniards captured our heroine and her children. For 3 years she was in captivity, but her fame was so great that Louis XIV himself intervened and asked the King of Spain to release her. According to one version, Marianne and Lawrence de Graaf settled in Louisiana, where he was creating a French colony. Their daughter did not let down the character either. She lived in Haiti and became famous for defeating a man in a duel. Our heroine is one of the few real pirates who did not disguise themselves as men, like, say, and Bonnie and Mary Read. Of course, most of the pirates in history were men, but there are about 100 female pirates. 40 of them pirated during the golden age of piracy. Some of them commanded entire pirate fleets. Tens of thousands of men went under their command. And the story of one of the real female pirates is like 2 drops of water, similar to the story of that Angelica, Marquis of Angels. Countess Jeanne de Belleville, a famous secular beauty, became a pirate to take revenge on the King of France for the fact that her husband, Count Maria de Belleville, was executed, accused of treason in 1430. Jeanne de Belleville was only 29. After selling all her estates, she bought 3 ships, hired a crew and received a letter of marque from the English crown, permission to attack French ships. She called her fleet the Fleet of Retribution. For 4 years, many ships have suffered from the Clayson Lioness, as Jeanne was nicknamed. She also attacked the castles of everyone who was to blame for the death of her husband. The King of France personally ordered to catch her alive or dead. Her fleet was defeated, but Jeanne herself and her sons fled and reached the possession of her husband's friend Jean de Montfort. Here she settled down and soon married the nobleman Gautier de Bentley. I began to go out and, in general, I lived a quiet, peaceful life. And her eldest son became a cannibal at all, the highest dignitary of France.